It began without warning. The sky split apart above Earth like a wound torn through reality. For 12 minutes, every telescope, radar array, and satellite screamed the same message across the world: they're here. The invasion fleet of the Zither Dominion filled the upper atmosphere, 700 warships gliding into orbit, their hulls gleaming with ion fire. They had crossed 7 light-years to claim this world, confident no primitive species could resist. Their commanders broadcast triumphal messages through open channels, signals so powerful that even home televisions caught fragments, an alien voice proclaiming judgment on a lesser race. To them, humanity was a pest infestation to be corrected. They had studied Earth's wars, our divisions, our history of chaos, and concluded we would fall apart at the first strike. Their generals expected surrender within hours, believing that terror alone would crush resistance. But the response they received was silence. From the moment the first alien dreadnought entered low orbit, every major government went dark. Military frequencies sealed, global internet shuttered, satellite constellations blinked out as if swallowed by the void. The aliens mistook it for panic. It was not panic. It was preparation. On the ground, civilians stood in disbelief, watching vast shadows crawl across the sky. Columns of light lanced down, tearing through clouds like blades. Entire cities flickered under the shadow of the alien carriers. The Zither war doctrine was simple: overwhelm and dominate. Within minutes they leveled defense installations across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Yet even as cities burned, the aliens noted something strange. There were no mass evacuations, no chaotic screams on public networks, no desperate pleas for peace. Instead, every intercepted human transmission carried the same tone: clipped, calm, methodical. Orders, not panic. Coordination, not chaos. It unsettled them. The Dominion had crushed 50 worlds before Earth. Each invasion had followed the same pattern: fear, surrender, obedience. But humanity, though surrounded by death, didn't cry out. The aliens could feel it in the quiet of their sensors, a species not submitting, but watching. Measuring. Waiting. In orbit, the alien flagship Clarin S Fist adjusted its position, preparing the atmospheric bombardment. Their science officers noted faint electromagnetic pulses in high orbit, erratic, localized, vanishing before detection. They assumed it was interference from human weapons. The commander dismissed it. Primitive static, he said, confident in the superiority of their plasma shields. Over the next hour, reconnaissance drones swept across continents, scanning for military activity. They found nothing: no aircraft, no launch signatures, no radar locks. Humanity had vanished beneath the surface. Yet every destroyed target seemed too quiet, too exact. No survivors, but no chaos either. "They're coordinated," one officer whispered. "Someone planned this." By the 4th hour, the alien fleet spread across the planet in attack formation. Massive carriers opened their bombardment arrays. The order came: commence planetary cleansing. But before the first plasma beam fired, strange anomalies rippled across their sensors. Power fluctuations, signal jamming, bursts of static that made their targeting systems falter. The aliens tried to compensate, recalibrating. Then they noticed something impossible: thousands of faint metallic objects rising from the planet's dark side, moving in perfect formation. No energy signatures, no heat emissions. Just inert metal climbing through the atmosphere. The alien commanders laughed. "Debris," they said. "Junk hurled by frightened primates." But deep within the flagship, a single technician watched the trajectory data and froze. The objects were accelerating, not falling. Their paths were synchronized, not random. Each was locked onto a separate ship. Before he could speak, the readings vanished. Back on Earth, the night sky flickered. The stars seemed to blink, and then returned unchanged. For a few brief seconds, the alien fleet continued to broadcast. Then all channels cut out. No explosions, no heat flares, no warning. Just silence. The technician's console displayed one final line of data: unidentified kinetic launch, Mach 12 impact imminent. He never finished reading it aloud. And on Earth, humanity waited. No celebration. No declaration. Only the quiet understanding that the sky would soon clear, and the world would still belong to them. Above the planet's darkened horizon, the remnants of the Zither Armada drifted in uneasy silence. No explosions, no debris fields, no trace of a counterattack they could explain. Their instruments rebooted in confusion, trying to make sense of what had struck them. Systems flickered back online, revealing gaps in formation where entire cruisers had vanished. The flagship's commander demanded reports, but communication relays were scrambled by static unlike anything they had ever encountered. The noise wasn't random, it was deliberate, rhythmic, patterned interference. The humans were speaking in a language designed to be unreadable to outsiders. For the first time, the Dominion hesitated. The enemy they had mocked as primitive had struck without revealing a single ship, weapon, or soldier. No plasma, no energy signatures, only silence and precision. They had expected screams, not mathematics. Yet across every surviving console, one phrase appeared repeatedly: signal locked, guidance disrupted. The Zither engineers stared in disbelief. Somehow, Earth had blinded an entire fleet with technology that didn't emit any detectable energy. Far below, the planet was still dark. No defensive transmissions, no counter-communication. Humanity had gone invisible. The aliens didn't understand how a world so densely networked could vanish from the digital spectrum. Every orbital scan returned the same result: interference walls, ghost frequencies, reflections looping endlessly through old satellite grids. Someone had turned Earth's own infrastructure into a shield. What looked like silence was actually camouflage. The Dominion dispatched ground drones to investigate. Within minutes, the machines lost connection, their feeds collapsing into static bursts. A few captured seconds showed strange flickers of light, not explosions, but EMP discharges in tight, surgical bursts. Entire drone wings ceased to exist before reaching the ground. The aliens tried to adapt, redirecting power, shifting frequencies. Every attempt failed. The more they reached out, the deeper the silence grew, like the planet itself was swallowing their signals. Inside the flagship, a science officer reviewed intercepted human archives. They discovered fragments of old defense programs, projects shelved decades earlier, orbital kinetic deterrence, autonomous counter-systems, artificial intelligences trained for instant retaliation. The officer presented his findings to the commander. "If these records are accurate," he said, "they built their own extinction protocols during their wars. Systems that require no authorization once triggered." The commander dismissed it. "No species would entrust its survival to machines." The officer's voice was quiet. "Humans would." Without warning, the fleet's forward sensors detected motion again. Not from Earth this time, but from orbit itself. Dozens of derelict satellites, relics of human space exploration, began shifting positions. Their thrusters ignited in synchronized bursts, moving with unnatural precision. The fleet attempted to jam the signals, but the satellites ignored every attempt. They weren't transmitting commands, they were following instructions embedded long ago. The aliens realized too late they were trapped inside a geometric formation, a lattice of orbital nodes surrounding Earth, each one reflecting and amplifying a signal the Dominion couldn't decode. Energy readings spiked for exactly 6 seconds. Then everything went still again. The aliens' targeting systems failed completely. Weapons refused to lock, engines misfired, guidance systems turned inert. The commander shouted for diagnostic resets, but none responded. Their ships floated blind, deaf, and paralyzed. One officer whispered, "They are disabling us one layer at a time." On Earth, no one spoke publicly. Cities remained quiet, their skies filled only with the echoes of descending debris. Hidden command centers deep underground monitored the situation, confirming each orbital disruption in cold, clinical reports. There was no celebration, no broadcast of triumph. Only terse confirmations. Phase 1 complete. Orbital isolation achieved. Above, the Dominion tried to retreat, but their drives refused to respond. Every ship that attempted to break formation spiraled aimlessly before stabilizing in place. The fleet hung motionless, suspended by invisible chains of interference. The aliens realized the truth. The humans had turned their entire planet into a weaponized fortress, every orbiting relic and discarded probe part of a vast, dormant defense web. They hadn't built it for war. They had built it because they knew war would come. The commander stared at the earth below, and understood too late that the silence wasn't fear. It was calculation. Humanity was not reacting, it was executing. And the sky, once theirs to command, no longer belonged to them. The Dominion's fleet hung motionless in orbit, crippled and blind. No alarms sounded, no visible enemy moved against them, yet an unspoken dread settled through every command deck. The commander of Clarinet's Fist ordered full system reboots, unaware that time itself had run out. Across the blackness of space, invisible objects were descending, cold, silent, and unstoppable. Humanity's response had already been launched. The first impacts occurred before any sensor registered movement. A single tungsten rod, 6 meters long and guided only by gravity, tore through an alien cruiser at 12 times the speed of sound. The kinetic energy released no fire, no explosion, only a shockwave that vaporized everything within kilometers. In 90 seconds, the same rain fell across the entire orbit. Hundreds of rods plunged from space, each following a trajectory calculated months, maybe years, in advance. No human fleet appeared. No plasma beams cut the sky. Just pure physics turned into vengeance. The Dominion's tactical computers went berserk, trying to model what was happening. Nothing matched their database. No energy weapons, no warheads, no radiation. Only projectiles, made of dense metal and silence. They could not be intercepted, could not be jammed, and could not be predicted. Every rod struck with surgical precision, slicing through shields as though they were air. Ships vanished mid-sentence, their communications cut off before the final syllable. One transmission lasted 3 seconds. Impact, hull breach, we... It ended abruptly, leaving only static. Within the fleet, chaos replaced arrogance. The Zither had never known fear like this. They had mastered plasma warfare and quantum manipulation, but they had never faced an enemy that fought with nothing more than velocity and calculation. Entire formations disintegrated in silence. One captain tried to rotate his cruiser behind the shadow of the moon, but a second projectile found him instantly. Another commander attempted to detonate his reactor, hoping to destroy nearby human weapons, but nothing remained to detonate. The rods left nothing behind but vapor and silence. On Earth, no one watched the battle directly. The systems that had triggered the retaliation, autonomous, ancient, and buried, required no operators. They were not controlled by generals, not limited by hesitation or mercy. Humanity had long ago entrusted its ultimate defense to something that would never blink. The rods were the final word of deterrence. If the planet was attacked, the answer would come faster than thought. The Zither realized the truth as their fleet disintegrated. The humans had designed a defense that required no emotion, no decision-making. They had accepted, centuries earlier, that survival could not depend on hesitation. The Dominion had mocked that pragmatism as barbaric. Now it annihilated them. In less than 2 minutes, 600 warships ceased to exist. The remaining vessels drifted helplessly, shattered by invisible forces they could not even detect. Survivors aboard one damaged carrier tried to record the event for their superiors. Their log described the sky filling with streaks of molten light, each one hitting with the weight of a mountain. The recording ended with the voice of an officer whispering, "They didn't even look at us. They just erased us." When the final impact faded, the stars returned. The orbit around Earth was empty save for fragments glowing faintly in the sunlight. The surviving ships, stripped of power, floated among the debris. From every wreck, faint distress calls echoed, pleading for understanding, not surrender. They wanted to know what had destroyed them. Then, across every open frequency, a single human transmission broke the silence. The voice was calm, almost mechanical, stripped of emotion. "This is Earth Defense Command. You are trespassing. Depart immediately or you will not be warned again. There was no signature, no leader, no face behind the message. Only the collective will of a species that refused extinction. The aliens who remained listened in terror. They had come to exterminate a primitive race and discovered an apex predator cloaked in restraint. Humanity had fought without fury, destroyed without spectacle, and ended a war before it began. Above a wounded world, the message repeated one last time, clear and absolute. We are Earth. Leave. The survivors fled, limping through the void, leaving behind their dead and the memory of a world that had answered with silence and steel. The war that was meant to last a lifetime had ended in seconds. The surviving Xyther ships drifted far beyond lunar orbit, engines crippled, hulls scarred with impact fractures that glowed faintly from residual heat. Their command hierarchy was gone, erased in less than 2 minutes, leaving scattered survivors clinging to wreckage and disbelief. Emergency transmissions carried across the void, broken pleas for rescue, fragments of confusion repeating endlessly. They didn't pursue, one voice said, its tone uncomprehending. They could have finished us, but they didn't. For the first time in the Dominion's long history of conquest, their enemy had shown no desire to conquer, only to end. A single recording from the battle became the foundation of every alien rumor that followed. It captured a human signal moments after the bombardment, a monotone voice declaring that the skies were closed. There was no emotion, no triumph. The voice didn't gloat, didn't explain. To the Dominion, it sounded less like a warning and more like a law of nature, calm, immovable, final. That simplicity terrified them more than annihilation. Across the wider galaxy, the news spread faster than light. The Xyther Dominion, undefeated in 2 centuries, had been broken by a planet still considered pre-interstellar. Empires that had once mocked Earth's isolation began to re-examine every archived human transmission they had dismissed. They studied our wars, our inventions, our habit of weaponizing necessity. The deeper they looked, the less they understood. Humanity's history wasn't one of empire or expansion. It was a chain of near extinctions, each survived through impossible improvisation. That revelation disturbed the galactic order. Every species that had once feared humanity's unpredictability now recognized it as something far worse, adaptability that bordered on inevitability. On Earth, the silence continued. Governments restored communication gradually, not to announce victory, but to confirm survival. The orbital systems that had acted autonomously were powered down with ritual precision, their operators treating them like sacred relics rather than machines. Humanity didn't celebrate. Cities buried their dead, rebuilt infrastructure, and reconnected the world. In public, there were no parades or speeches. Only brief statements broadcast across the networks. Global threat neutralized. Civilian safety restored. Behind those words lay a shared understanding. No one would speak of what happened in orbit. The debris from the destroyed fleet burned up over weeks, streaking across the atmosphere like endless meteor showers. People watched in silence as glowing fragments fell, whispering prayers not of victory, but of warning. The stars had come to kill them, and humanity had answered too efficiently. They knew it would happen again someday. The galaxy had seen their strength now. Curiosity would return, but not with diplomacy, with fear, preparation, and escalation. Humanity's name would no longer mean weakness. It would mean inevitability. The Dominion attempted to conceal the scale of their defeat, but captured data from fleeing ships betrayed them. The recordings reached neutral systems, then trade routes, then the galactic archives. Analysts replayed the same 90 seconds of destruction repeatedly, searching for human fleets, hidden weapons, or energy trails. They found none. What they did find was the pattern, impact intervals identical to gravitational drop calculations. It wasn't chaos. It was math, executed perfectly. The conclusions spread like infection. The humans had planned for this centuries in advance. An alien historian from the Valen archives wrote the first official report. His words echoed through the galaxy. Humanity does not wage war for conquest. They prepare for extinction, and when threatened, they act as extinction itself. The report circulated through military academies, eventually becoming forbidden reading. Yet everyone read it. Meanwhile, on Earth, the scientists studying the aftermath found no satisfaction in their success. They deactivated the orbital network, dismantled fragments for research, and documented every strike pattern. To them, it wasn't triumph, it was proof that they had crossed a moral threshold. They had built something that could erase a civilization in less time than a heartbeat, and they had used it without hesitation. The lesson wasn't pride, but burden. The aliens, however, saw it differently. To them, humanity was no longer a species, it was a phenomenon, something unpredictable, incomprehensible, and unstoppable when cornered. The few surviving Zyther officers returned home to whisper warnings no one believed. Do not test them. They don't seek glory. They seek survival. Those who listened understood the real horror. Humanity hadn't just won a battle. They had proven that mercy was a choice, not a weakness, and next time, they might choose differently. Years passed, but the memory of that brief war refused to fade. The stars above Earth no longer represented mystery or ambition, they were a quiet warning. Humanity had survived what no other world had, and in doing so, had revealed something ancient and absolute within itself. There was no joy in survival, only a collective understanding that the universe had seen them for what they truly were, a species that could adapt faster than it could fear. The governments of Earth united not out of celebration, but necessity. Every nation shared data, resources, and orbit, merging old rivalries into a singular purpose. Never again would they be caught unprepared. For the first time in history, humanity abandoned the illusion of borders. The remnants of the Orbital Defense Network became a joint construct known as the Global Array, operated by no flag, no nation, only a council of engineers sworn to secrecy. Their mandate was not expansion or retaliation, but vigilance. They didn't point their weapons outward in anger, but in watchfulness. The world was rebuilding quietly, yet every reconstruction plan carried a hidden clause: defense first, exploration second. Humanity's instinct to prepare had evolved into its defining virtue. As years turned into decades, Earth changed. The scars of bombardment became test sites for innovation. Cities were rebuilt stronger, cleaner, and self-sustaining. Energy networks shifted entirely to orbital systems, controlled by artificial intelligence that required no human oversight. Yet, behind the progress, an undercurrent of silence remained. Humanity didn't boast about the war. It didn't teach it in schools or commemorate it in monuments. The event became classified under a name never spoken publicly: the Silence War. Every record of it existed in encrypted archives known only to a few. Beyond Earth, whispers traveled through the galaxy like superstition. The story of a world that annihilated an empire in less than 2 minutes spread far beyond known space. To those who heard it, humanity became a paradox. Some saw them as monsters, others as gods, but all agreed they were better left undisturbed. Alien scholars debated endlessly over what drove them: anger, instinct, or cold logic. None of the theories captured the truth. Humanity didn't act from emotion, they acted from inevitability. They had learned through centuries of self-destruction that hesitation was death, and mercy was strength, only when freely chosen. Generations later, children born under clear skies heard only fragments of what had happened. Their parents spoke of unity, not vengeance. Their teachers spoke of discipline, not dominance. Yet every adult who had lived through that day carried the same unspoken understanding. They had looked into the abyss and chosen not to become it. The silence that followed the war wasn't shame, it was restraint. Humanity had proven its power and then turned it off, because using it again would mean there was no longer anyone left to save. Far beyond the solar system, the remnants of the Zyther Dominion tried to rebuild their pride. Their leaders outlawed any mention of Earth, labeling the incident a myth created by cowards. But even they couldn't erase the recordings, those 90 seconds of destruction that defied all known science. In private, their scholars studied the data endlessly, searching for weakness. They found none. One alien philosopher summarized it with unsettling simplicity: they fight like nature itself, indifferent, precise, unstoppable. Centuries passed. Humanity reached the stars not as conquerors but as wanderers. When their ships entered alien systems, no resistance met them. Fleets turned away, colonies went silent, and entire species observed from afar. Humanity did not seek dominion. They came to learn, to build, to understand. Yet every vessel they launched carried a hidden failsafe, because history had proven curiosity without caution invited extinction. When the first human emissary stood before the Galactic Council, the chamber fell into silence. No one dared speak first. The representative simply said, "We come in peace. But understand this, we are not fragile. We do not forget." The hall remained still, not out of fear, but respect. Humanity had become legend, not for conquering, but for surviving without losing its soul. The voice that once declared the skies closed had evolved into something far greater. It was not a threat anymore, it was a promise. "We are human!" The message echoed through every star system that listened. "We do not seek war. But if it finds us again, we will end it the same way we always have, swiftly, completely, and without hate."